I'm so excited to again have our monthly leadership sessions. And this has become something of culture in our organizations where we want to create spaces where we can just invest in the lives of people that are saying, I'm a person that wants to be a co-creator of the future. And in this process, we are inviting leaders and people that has really got something to share with us to come and just deposit in our lives what is it that they have done that made them successful. And just come and share stories, not of just only success, but what have they done that if they look back at it, could have done it differently and maybe got different results. So this is our 5th session, I think. No, the 6th was. Yeah, this is the 6th session of the year. And we started this off as part of our people of excellence, which is part of our values. We are saying we are people of excellence. And as people of excellence, we want to create spaces where we can just invest in the lives of people. And one of the first characteristics of a person of excellence is somebody with humility. And we've said the definition of humility here before, but humility is, with enough humility, we realize that each one of us can learn from each other. So yesterday, while I was speaking to Martin and just brief him who we are and what is taking place in our business, we decided that we wanted to have today a more interactive session. And I said to Martin, we also believe in the power of vulnerability. And that means if you don't know, you say you don't know. And Martin said to me, Christa, but all the answers that we need are represented in this room. So we've set up the room to create more of a discussion environment that you can really ask questions, that you can give your input on certain things, so that we can have an interactive discussion this morning on a very, very relevant topic in our country, but also in our company. How do we create more inclusive working environments? We've, over the past 3 or 4, I'm here for the 4th year now, we've appointed so many new people, and there are so many talent that are situated all over in our business. How do we create inclusive environments so that we can make sure that the people with talent that we brought into our business can really participate in being a co-creator of the future that they're also going to be part of? So that is the purpose and the heart of this process. And today we really got a privilege to listen to Martin Kuscus. Kuscus. You said, I thought couscous, it's like, I don't know.
It's not lunchtime
Is it not lunchtime yet? So I thought it was, yes, I immediately liked you more when I thought it was couscous. Martin has got a CV like this. But they say people that has got, they really got the CV that we can give them a very large introduction, don't need a large introduction. And Martin is a kind of person like that. I met him for the first time on YouTube. I've listened to a teaching that he did at LifeWork Leadership where he specifically spoke about diversity, thank you, Martin. He specifically spoke about diversity and how to create more inclusive environments. And I made contact with Martin and I said, will you please come and speak to our leaders at this session? And ever since that, I'm on Martin's WhatsApp list and I get early in the morning a WhatsApp from him encouraging me for the day. He used to be a chief executive officer of the SABS, and he will talk more to us about that. But Martin calls himself today as a CEO, a Chief Encouragement Officer. And I can really say, Martin, since I met you, that is what you've been. You've been an encouragement officer in my life early in the morning, receiving just amazing messages from you. So thank you for who you are. Martin is a family man. He's a man of integrity. He's a man with a deep character that's got a deep belief. And from that place, he wants to serve a community. So Martin, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. Let's give him a hand of welcome at AFRI. Thank you very much.
Good morning, people. Good morning. Sure, it's history, you know. I've been passing this building for quite a number of years. I didn't know that you're in such a beautiful place here. But Krista, thanks for your warm welcome. And I really regard it as a great privilege to share with you some of my life experiences on a subject which is increasingly becoming more relevant, more topical, and more current. But I trust that as I impart some of my own life experiences with you this day, that I'm also here and open to your own experiences, because when I lead this place, I also would like to be enriched by your own current reality. Now, before we kick off, I just want us to break the ice. And I would like you to take up your pens and paper. And we're just going to do a simple exercise. You all have your pens and paper. Now, it's a very simple exercise. I want you to write your name. Well, don't do it yet. I'm going to time you, and I want you to write your name as many times as possible. Just your first name, okay? When I say yes, you start. Starting now. Stop. Now take that very same pen and exchange it. For those of you who wrote with your right hands, put it in your left hand. And for those who wrote with your left hand, put it in your right hand. I didn't ask for a debate. You start writing now. Stop. Okay, let's get some feedback. First, let's tally the scores. The first, just count the first set of names that you've, and then put it on the side, and then the second set. Let's get some feedback. How many of you was able, in the first set of numbers, to get between 25 and 30? What's your name? Corné. You're writing pretty fast. Zbu. Who can't write Zbu? No. No. Call in the Hawks. That you are Sibusiso, I suspect. Between 20 and 25, we're doing better. Between 15 and 20, between 10 and 15, what's your name? Zulofelo. Okay, I understand. Okay, let's go to the second set of scores. Between 25 and 30. Where are the hands, guys? Between 20 and 25. Between 15 to 20. What's your name? Putti. Are you ambidextrous or what? Because you had exactly the same score earlier on.
Yes, I write with both my.
Okay. So he's exempt. He should have declared that up front. Yeah. Declaration of interest. So, between 10 and 15. Doing better. Between 5 and 10 at least. Yes. Okay, let's share some experiences. How did it feel like to write, for those of you who are right-handed, except you, Putti, for those of you who are right-handed, to write with their left hand for the first time? How did it feel like? Talk to me. Uncomfortable. Awkward. Difficult. out of control. Anything else? There's somebody that mentioned slow. Annoyed. Any other experiences? Sorry? It needs patience. Anything else? Got better. Now, this morning we would like to talk about creating a more inclusive environment in the workplace. And let nobody fool you with the 7 steps to this and the ABC to that and the 1, 2, 3 towards having an inclusive. This is what diversity and an inclusive culture is all about. It's going to be uncomfortable. It will at times look very awkward. At times it's going to be difficult, and we're going to say we've tried our best, this thing is not working. It can get out of control because you're embarking on a journey and you don't know, there might be speed wobbles, potholes, all sort of things, and you can get out of control. Sometimes it appears slow. Sometimes you get annoyed. Can't we just forget about this thing? Sometimes it takes patience. But, as one of the colleagues said, it can get better. And I like that one. It can get better. So, let's just trace where we come from. Last Saturday was June the 16th. 42 years ago, in Soweto, a very defining moment happened in the history of our country. And last week, Saturday, reminded us of the stark realities that played itself out on that very, very sad day in the history of our country. The issue was not Afrikaans. As a matter of fact, my home language, my mother tongue, is Afrikaans. The issue was what Afrikaans represented and the proxy. Afrikaans was then seen as the proxy for everything else that suppressed and excluded people from the mainstream of public life. Fast forward, another milestone was on the 11th of February 1990, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison after sacrificing 17 years for a just cause. And when he was inaugurated in 1994, I think it was the 7th of May, he stood up there at the podium and he casted a vision for this country about a rainbow nation that is at peace with itself and at peace with the world. Now we have come a long way since 16 June 1976. We've come a long way since we had our first democratic election. I was just reminded the other night as I saw the opening of the World Cup to say, by the way, we've also hosted that thing. You remember 2010? There were some serious breakthroughs that we've done. Who would have thought on June 16, in Bloemfontein for that matter, a young boy from a township in Port Elizabeth will lead the Springboks as the captain in the person of Siya Kolisi in a serious win against England. Who would have imagined that? And you see, we can so easily, and I don't want us to discount some of these other realities. We'll get into it right now. But we need to distinguish between noise and we need to distinguish between substance. And yes, there, however, this uncomfortable piece of unfinished work, which we as South Africans have not thoroughly engaged with. And we know we keep on pushing it towards the back burner, and every time when there's a flare up, we don't have the skill set and we don't have the mindset to engage with it in an empowering way. And that is the issue of racial discrimination on various fronts. You see, it's almost like the way we treat that cousin of us that's in jail. We know about the cousin, but we hardly speak about the cousin, isn't it so? People are asking questions, where's Sibusiso? No, he went to Cape Town. He's doing well there, but we know he's here in Sun City. We know he's somewhere here in Kosimampuru, but he's never spoken about. And this is how we sometimes treat this whole notion of racial discrimination. It's a reality, but it's never spoken about. Now, I know we all come from different belief systems, and I respect that. But arguably one of the most intelligent men that ever lived on the face of the earth was a gentleman of King Solomon. And in one of his books, in Songs of Solomon, he made the following statement in chapter 2, verse 15. He said, "Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, because our vineyards are in bloom." And one of these foxes represents those hindrances, those irritations, those contradictions that prevent us as a country to pursue a common destiny and to create prosperity for all of us in this country. It inhibits us to optimize our potential, and it inhibits us to be a true united country. And given our unfortunate past, regrettably, race has become a bookmarker that remains deeply in the psyche of our nation. It performs a function dividing humans, thereby robbing them of the opportunity to coexist in harmony as equals. I'm of the view that over the years, after Madiba made this pronouncement about the Rainbow Nation, we have not followed through with this vision with the necessary urgency, with the necessary dedication, and the attention to detail to make sure that over the last 24 years, we will really attack it on all fronts and work through these processes. And there are two elements that played a role in this. The first thing is a thing called apathy. And what do I mean with apathy? It's that lack of interest, that lack of concern, that lack of feeling or emotion. Yeah, it's them, it's not us. Just because we can now legally stay in the same neighborhood, there's no more Group Areas Act and so on. Just because legally we can send our children to the same schools. Just because legally now, in terms of the Constitution, we've got freedom of movement and so on, does not mean that me and you at all times relate to each other out of a conviction from a shared identity and authentic acknowledgement of each other's humanity. You see, when this subject comes up, we speak of it not in an empowering way, but more out of protest and frustration. And you see, if we are not moving out of this apathetic state, the next generation is going to inherit this type of environment. The second thing is political correctness. It is a situation where, let me not speak up. They might chop off my head. If I say something, they might call me a racist. If I say something, they might call me a reactionary. If I say something, they might think I am a troublemaker. No, political correctness does not take us any further, because all the time we need to interrogate the status quo and find out, are these things still relevant for our current situation? Now, one of the most devastating effects of our unfortunate past, it's how it eroded our human capital development. Yes, we together here all have a collective responsibility to regain lost ground emanating from our unfortunate past. And how can we do it in our workplace? You see, how do we go about co-creating a more inclusive environment to enhance our human capital development? Recently I read an article in the Harvard Business Review around the culture factor. And they put organizational culture so beautifully. They said culture is the tacit social order of an organization. It shapes the attitudes and behaviors in wide-ranging and durable ways. Cultural norms define what is encouraged, discouraged, accepted, and rejected within a group. When properly aligned with personal values, drives, and needs, culture can unleash tremendous amounts of energy towards a shared purpose and foster an organization to thrive. And one of the biggest catalysts to actually drive an organizational culture is to build an inclusive culture and to be always consciously aware of diversity, because it has been scientifically proven that diversity brings about the following things. Firstly, higher morale among staff. When people know that they are valued and treated equally, it boosts their morale. Even if it's the lady who sweeps the floor, even if it's the lady who just brings you the tea, if you treat that person with dignity, she will make sure that you won't get cold tea, okay? She will make sure that the office is clean because you affirm her and see her as part of the bigger picture of your organizational culture. Secondly, it allows for different perspectives and a melting pot of our ideas. I don't like yes men around me. I want people that can sharpen my thinking. I want people that can challenge my perspectives, because I don't know it all. And so are you and me, you also, not Mr. and Mrs. Perfect. We need the inputs of others to sharpen our perspectives in life. Thirdly, the world is increasingly moving into an era of globalization. And a lot of companies moving out, they tap into the strengths of diversity so that some of their staff members who knows the culture and nuances better, if, say, for example, they want to do an African expansion. Who's better advice if you want to set up some operation in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, than the very people that comes from those places, because they understand the cultural nuances much better than yourself. But fourthly, we're all very much conscious of corporate citizenry. Corporates are called upon nowadays in our country to make sure that they improve the environment in which they operate. And unless you have an inclusive culture that brings on board the diverse nature of the environment in which you operate, you might sign out check after check, initiative after initiative, and it will not make any impact at all if you think that you know it all. Now, over the last 20-odd years, diversity has taken on many meanings in the workplace in our country. During the first phase after 1994, the focus was more about desegregation. The second phase was more about affirmative action. But now we talk of greater inclusion, and it's wider than just affirmative action, desegregation. Now diversity is regarded as a more inclusive culture that takes on a whole myriad of factors: disability, gender, youth, sexual orientation, cognitive ability, the urban-rural bias. All those things need to be factored in to create a more inclusive culture. Since you've now discovered that I've read a little bit about diversity, let me tell you a personal story. What is my journey about diversity? I come from a place called Klerksdorp. Anybody who knows Klerksdorp? It's now called Matlosana. I grew up there as the eldest of 8 siblings in a place called Alabama. You know, I lived in a colored area, Alabama, but for 17 years I worked as a nurse. I was a nurse for 17 years. Predominantly, the hospital was in the township called Jubberton, hospital called Sepong. I trained there as a nurse. I went through the ranks, student nurse, did my degree in nursing education, became a lecturer. Then I went into administration and so on. But my children attended an English medium school, which was in the Indian township, Mansell Park. Because as a civil servant, I couldn't afford all these expensive private schools and so on. And my children attended there. And to crown it all, Sundays, I used to worship in a predominantly white church at Rhema. And we will sometimes be 6, 7 black families and so on. And those were tough days. I mean, at one stage, our church was bombed in 1992. On the 16th of December, for those that are younger than, that's about my age, will recall, those people said, ons doen het ter nagedagtenis van die gelofte. And they bombed our church because our church was an inclusive church. It accommodated people from all racial persuasions. That's the place I was brought up in. You see, to crown it all, I'm married to a Motswana lady for the last 37 years. And one of the biggest decisions in my life was to actually walk down my eldest daughter down the aisle in 2012 and gave her over to an Australian for that matter. Talk about diversity. Now, I always wanted that the remaining 2 that's not married yet, as you know, it was a hard call for me to export my eldest daughter to Australia. But guys, please protect the gene pool. Make sure that he's got genes, intelligent genes. Couldn't care about his money and so on because the gene pool can't be diluted. Intelligence is inherited. No? So I said, protect the gene pool. Something significant happened to me in 1994 during the advent of democracy. The ruling party approached me because I was very active in my community, not necessarily building down buildings and throwing stones, but very strategic, Who will suspect a nurse? Distributing pamphlets at night and so on, who will suspect a nurse? Very strategic. And the ruling party approached me and I entered the realm of politics. I was elected in the first legislature of the Northwest Provincial Government, and within a matter of days, my life turned around. Remember, we were sworn in the Saturday, and that Wednesday, the Premier of the province by then was Papa Molefe. He called us all into a room, made a big speech about the challenges and so on, and he read the names of the guys of the team that must support him in driving some of these changes. And when he came to number 7, he said, the finance portfolio will go to Martin Kuscus. Now, I didn't know a debit from a credit by that time. Remember, I was just a nurse, man. And here I'm called upon to manage 6.8 billion rand. That was my first budget. When I left there, it was just under 20 billion rand. And I tell you, it was a very, very steep learning curve. But through God's grace, I still hold the distinction with Jabu Mleketi of being the longest serving MECs of finance in this country. I survived 2 successive terms. Heads were rolling all over the show. And I dare you to go and Google. No tender scandals, no jobs for pals, I kept my nose clean. Now, in a political environment, once your name starts appearing at the golf club as an honorary member, then your time is up. Now, if you go to Leopard Park Golf Club now, you'll see my name there, the Honorable Kuscus, honorable member with an 18 handicap. So I moved out of politics, and I ended up at the South African Bureau of Standards, where I became the CEO there in 2004. Now, on my arrival at SABS, there was a very unfortunate incident that happened just 2 weeks before my arrival. One of the staff members lost his disciplinary hearing at the CCMA. And during the clearance, HR clearance process, nobody knew that he was carrying a gun with him. And he walked into his supervisor's office, pulled out the gun, and shot the supervisor and turned the gun on himself. He died first, and then the lady died 2 days after that at Little Company of Mary Hospital just across the SABS. 10 days after that, here comes the new CEO. I tell you, the air was loaded. Atmosphere, it's a transformation effort that went terribly wrong there. It was like a stew that's been cooked for a while now, you know, a little bit of peppers, chilies, garlic and everything, waiting to be dished up. Underlying currents there that have not been resolved. I moved in there and it was quite a challenging journey. Because, you know, here are two legitimate expectations. On the one side, you had legitimate fears from Gavi, Tanzani, and Sarel and them that were working there for 39, 41 years. They don't know any other life. And they are worried because this new CEO might restructure the place and we might be out of a job. On the other hand, you've got legitimate expectation from Sibusiso and Tabiseng. And these people that came there with honors degrees and master's degrees and halfway through their MBAs, but they're stuck down there in the labs. There's no advancement for them. How do you balance those things, the fears and the legitimate expectations of the staff? We went into a very intense session where we challenged some of these paradigms that got hold of that place. It was a gender paradigm, for example. And, you know, it was a well-facilitated discussion. I brought in 3 experts. The one was Dr. David Malapo, Dr. Ketso Mabusela, and I also brought in a gentleman by the name of Blackie Swart. Who knows Blackie Swart? Yeah. What a name, you know, Blackie Swart. And Blackie was a very, 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 you know, his maturity, his wisdom and so on helped us a long way to go through that journey. But we challenged these paradigms. The gender paradigm, you know, the engineering field was very male-dominated. We had to challenge the age paradigm. Some of these people didn't want the youngsters to have a say in this thing. We've been doing this thing for 20 years like that. What's this new thing you're talking about? No, but Professor so-and-so, now the professor doesn't know a thing. He just wrote the book. There was also the regional paradigm, head office versus the 12 regions out there. And it's a staff complement of close to 1,600 people. There was also the divisional paradigm. Who makes the money? The commercial section. The other people are just sucking out money from the business. But there was also a racial paradigm that we had to confront. And you know, at the end of the day, we reached consensus about what is the ideal SABS that we're all yearning for. People signed up to that, and we mapped out a 5-year program. And how did we drive that process? Firstly, once there was consensus, we had to maintain momentum. And maintaining that momentum, I selected champions. As a matter of fact, not I, it was people, you know, that through internal processes, true champions emerge, not necessarily out of the managerial ranks, but from all sectors and strata of the organization. But I also had to lead by example. I had to walk in relational integrity. I had to walk the talk there. One unfortunate incident happened. You know, new CEO, brought in new executives. One was marketing, the other one was HR. And lo and behold, hardly 5 months, my new superstar marketing individual that's, you know, very, very flashy guy, you know, he's a real marketing fellow. He messed around with our credit card, man. And I had to fire this guy. I had to fire him. Because the people were watching me, You said you're going to clean up here. Is he going to touch one of his guys? A few months after that, my HR executive, same thing, didn't declare interest, and one of the relatives got also a top job. She sat in the interview with me. We found out ultimately, and she had to also disappear. I also created strategic focus discussions where I will sit with about 20-25 staff members every second Monday. They will be randomly selected. We used to call it Martin's Moments. And Martin will sit. There will be a tray of muffins, coffee, and we will just focus on 3 questions. What happened? What's missing? What's next? How do you experience some of the changes we've introduced? Because I tell you, if you're a CEO, the last time you heard the truth was when you were appointed as CEO. The people will make sure what gets to the table is filtered so nicely. It smells like roses when it gets onto your table. Until one day, the bottle bursts. And I have to make sure that I do these dipsticks for myself, from time to time, engage with the business there and find out what's happening there. I also had to break glass ceilings. There are people there, we put them in management position, but they were frustrated. These are technical people. They want to be in the labs with their white coats and so on, and look at the new best method of doing the tests and so on. And I'm calling him into a health and safety meeting. I'm calling him into all manner of meetings and keeping him out of his of his technical field. And then we created a technical stream and a managerial stream. On the technical stream, we did not hit your pocket, but we created a career path for you where you became a chief technical specialist. What a beautiful title. Just removing you from saying you can't be a divisional manager anymore. We didn't hit your pocket, but psychologically, the title man, I am the chief technical specialist in the pump lab. I'm chief technical specialist in the pharmaceutical lab. And by so doing, those people, most of them were just from the older, well-experienced. I said, okay, I'm giving you 3 people, Abdul, Tabisang, Sipo. In the next 3 years, your successor must come out of Abdul, Sipo, and Tabisang. You're going on retirement, you don't go and sit with all that knowledge somewhere in Brooklyn or Waterkloof or so. You write down the manuals, you teach them these things, and you need to groom your successor. And 35% of your bonus depend on what you invest in Abdul, Sibusiso, and Tabisang. And I tell you, they go for it. Well, now and then say, jy weet hy sê pa mannetjie kom nog gaan mooi reg. Hy het my verbaas, All of a sudden, there was new impetus. And then the ladies and the gentleman who's studying MBAs and who's got managerial aptitude, we gave them the support system to advance. We also celebrated achievements. We made a big song and dance about every small achievement. You see, sometimes it's a question of perspective. We can so easily get trapped in what's wrong and we don't celebrate what's right. And we made a big song and dance about it, knowledge people that made strides in our area of transformation. What were the results? We ultimately ended up, during my term, and sadly so, this weekend, I opened up the City Press newspaper, I see SAPS was thrown under the bus. Have you read that article? The minister is going to dissolve the board and fire people there and so on. But during our term, we were in the top certification bodies in the world. Profitability increased substantially. There was a reduction in staff turnover. I was even elected onto the ISO Council. In 2006, in Ottawa, I presented at that conference a report on some of our transformation work that we've done in SAPS as well as the region. And when I walked out of there the next day, I was elected onto the ISO Council. I served on the ISO Council for 2 years. I tell you, it was such a groundbreaking learning experience for me, because you sit there and for close to an hour you haven't said a thing. You're just soaking up the wisdom. Because there are guys like Dr. Paolo Scolari, the international chairman of Fiat, representing Italy. George Arnold from Lucian Technologies, and just changing my mindset from a little hometown boy, South African bureau standards, and to start talking about the world. It's a major experience for me. Used to go to Geneva at least 5-6 times a year. And we even expanded internationally, opened up offices in Shanghai. When I left there, we had a footprint in 16 countries where we did certification work. Now, some of these experiences that I've just shared with you, and I'll come to the other just now, prepared me for future leadership roles. I had to go through all those things because I knew that at some stage of my life, I will have to make an input to co-create a diverse culture in this country. In 2011, I was elected as the president van die Afrikaanse Handelsinstituut. I used to carry a chain like a mayor when I go to Meneer die President. When I get into Potgietersrus, the old man with the long beard will wait for me, Meneer die President, welkom hier in Potties. And I was the president van die Afrikaanse Handelsinstituut. As things are now, I'm on the board of, it's not my church, but I'm on the board of another church, they've got a big counseling center called Coram Deo here in Pretoria. What's that? In the Ferry Glen area. NG Kerk Oosterlig. You know NG Kerk Oosterlig? There's a big counseling center there where we're now touching across, because there's a great deal of urbanization taking place there. Mainland, Maine, and all those activities. There's a lot of stuff happening in the urban environment. And last year alone, we did 1,600 counseling therapeutic interventions at that center across the spectrum. I was prepared for this journey for a time like this. It went slow. I had to exercise patience. It was sometimes difficult. It was sometimes even uncomfortable. But that's the journey that I had to go. I'm on the board of Netcare for the last 9 years now. And I'm part of the Social and Ethics Board Subcommittee. And in 2010, Netcare only had 0.31% representation of people with disabilities of our staff members. We then set an ambitious target of 4% representation by 2020. And at the end of 2017, our current representation is 3.6%. They're actually poaching people from us now. It was a conscious and deliberate effort. What lessons did I learn out of that? For change to occur, we had to provide a framework about how it should occur. Change doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's deliberate and it's intentional. And therefore, we had to provide the framework on how it should occur and provide the necessary management systems to effectively measure the output. There was also strong executive support. Thirdly, there was proper and honest evaluation about what are the hindrances. Sometimes it's attitudinal, sometimes it's physical, that we had to address to make sure that we overcome some of these things that create obstacles for people with disabilities to function in our environment. You see, diversity is not a numbers game. It's a lived experience. It's a way of being. And how do we change some of these paradigms and block us sometimes from being inclusive instead of retreating to our own little lagers and holy huddles and stuff like that, and where we are familiar? You see, it's only through a culture of engagement that we can have a better understanding of what's happening around us. And I want to raise a few questions with you, and I want you to seriously think about these questions. Firstly, who are my friends? You see, if you don't build relationships across the racial divide, you're going to actually be impoverished because there's such richness in our diversity. There's so many things that I've learned across the cultural divide that made a better person out of me. I've got friends from all sectors of society. And you see, in this process I've learned. At some stage of my life, I thought buying flowers for my wife was a white thing, you know. It's not a white thing. A guy by the name of Brian Winkler, one of my friends, I asked him, Brian, you forever stopping here at Spar and let me take just buy flowers and what have you, and take it to Sunny. And so, what is this flowers thing, Brian? And Brian taught me about the language of love. You know. His wife's language of love is flowers. Others is through something else. Some other people's love language is to share responsibility, doing something together. You hear what I'm trying to say? I wouldn't have known it. I would have still thought it's a white thing. But I had to learn. You know, also, some of my observations is that as I walk through the whole spectrum of society, white people are very punctual. Don't hold your rocks, okay? I don't say black people are not. Just hold your rock. But they get very nervous when things doesn't start on time in church and so on. And they're very conscious of time. And if the doorman talk too long, you'll see them. And I've spoken in quite a few of these churches, you know. They watch you if you go beyond time, you know. Well, we black guys, no, we come and we want to put in our chorus towards the last. There the thing goes on. Okay. Now, somewhere in between lies the South African reality. If we are so rigid, we can suppress the spontaneity of people. Oh, no, we're going to be late. Don't sing now. The program must run. No, we're going to suppress people's spontaneity. Hey, because our people want to sing. Our people compose a song right there on the spot with its own version. With its own version. As the, you know, on politics, on the sports fields at the stadiums and so on, they compose a song right there. The spontaneity also, you watch it, you know, when you go to certain functions, you know, people can start doing stuff and they start moving their bodies. The other guys, if the organ is not around, die oral nie gespeel het, niks gaan gebeur in die kerk. With my Indian colleagues in the school governing bodies when I was in Menzel Park, I was amazed at how prudent they are in managing finances. Mr. Haluji and Mr. Saluji want every cent to be accounted for. And these are, you know, some of them might be well-to-do people, but a lot of them were working-class people because the rich people send their children to private schools. I really admired the sense of prudence. Every cent will be accounted for. I also admire the traditional values amongst black people, especially in the rural areas. Every white person should at least attend a black funeral. It's such an amazing experience to deal with grief, to deal with mourning. Yeah, ons is bietjie haastig hier. We're a little bit in the church service, one or two speeches and so on. No, blacks, it's the whole week. We mourn this thing until we've cried our lungs out. Am I talking to the right audience? And that funeral service, I've been to a couple of them. There's about 12 speakers there. But we're going to talk. We're going to talk. And after that, we'll eat. Yeah, we'll eat. I won't talk about the after tears and those sort of things. Why am I talking about these things? We've impoverished ourselves by not making friends across the color line. Because, you see, the second question I want to raise with you, what is my understanding of other people's life experiences? What makes them mad? What makes them glad? What makes them sad? Unless I understand that, you know. To some of us, and this must be edited from your video, to some of us, it's just common to say, ek is sommer nou gat vol, man. Ek is sommer die moer nou, jy weet. The black person, this guy's a racist, you know. He likes to swear at me. Then I'm hurtful, moron and also. I'm not using that language, don't get me wrong. But what makes them mad? Makes them glad? What makes them sad? Thirdly, who are my role models? We all claim that Madiba is our role model. But life is more about Madiba. I've got a few very, very strong role models from all spectrums of society. When I go, for example, to Stellenbosch, there's a gentleman there called Francois van Niekerk of the Mergon Trust. He always makes time for me just to tap into his wisdom. You know Francois van Niekerk? The guy that started the Atterbury Group and King Price Insurance and so on. And he's got this he's the biggest philanthropist on the African continent at the moment. And just sitting, and he became one of my role models, for example. There are some old veterans, political veterans. I go to them not to go and discuss politics, to tap into their wisdom about life. And I got to make decisions. Who are your role models? Your role model can't just be, the soap star. Or I would like to be like so-and-so. No, there's not just the outward attributes. You must look for the inner values of a person and model yourself. Fourth question I want to raise with you. Do I model the right values in my family? Do I prepare my children when they go out into the outside world to engage with an increasingly globalized and diverse culture, whether they are at university, at school, and so on? Because what I say around the dinner table shape their outlook when they go outside in the street. And because Dad says this about certain people, one time my baby girl, she's not a baby anymore, she's 27 years old. Zoe told me, Dad, shut up, you're a closet racist. I made just some passing remark on something I saw on the news. She said, shut up, you're a closet racist. Closet racist? Be careful what we say in front of our children. That shapes the outlook towards life. Fourthly, fifth question I want you to say, are you involved in stereotyping or generalization? You see, Chimamanda Adichie said it so beautifully. She said the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. Be careful for generalizations. Be careful to characterize people and say, all whites are like that. Do you really know the 4 million or 5 million of them personally by name? All blacks are like that. Something that can't be scientifically proven, but you've drawn generalization. I embrace people from my own experience. And I've experienced very good whites. I've also experienced very bad ones. I've experienced very good blacks, but ek het ook slegte mense gesien. Bad blacks. In my own environment. And who am I to generalize people? We need to embrace people and not generalize on their unique. And so when we come into the workplace, we can't take what has been spoken about at a Braaivleis fire after the test rugby and make it gospel. We discard those things. We can't take what has been spoken about in a taxi on our way to work and make it gospel here. I need to embrace each individual on his or own merit. Now, in Netcare, we also created opportunities to enhance open discussion about the realities of racism. And this conversation is called Diversity Beyond the Numbers. Because diversity is not a numbers game. We can send out our EE reports every year. There are more this, more women, more blacks. No, beyond the numbers. And people should be comfortable when they create a platform to speak about these things. Even top doctors at some of our top hospitals lost their practicing privileges at our hospitals because they were involved in racial behavior. The staff needs to know that there's an empowering environment, that racism will not be tolerated. Whether you bring in 8 million a year into this hospital or not, we can do without your 8 million, Mr. Specialist. But here, we're not going to tolerate racism. I want to conclude by saying, South Africa, are you learning anything this morning? You look so quiet in the Presbyterian church. You make me nervous, man. South Africa is a great country. There's a tremendous amount of goodwill in the country. All over where I go, people want to do good ultimately for the country. Doing good. Towards the end of 2016, I got my first encounter about this company, Afgri. I was called one Saturday morning to a place called Vasfontein, there next to Hammanskraal, to facilitate a strategic session with the board of Vasfontein, how to position that organization to the next level. And when I walked in, I saw this beautiful primary school, top-class school, second to none, can compete with the best in the private environment. And I saw that there's a plaque that said that school was built by Afgri. Do you know about what I'm talking about? Vasfontein. How did Vasfontein start? Johan Grobler bought this patch of land, farmed there, started just loving the farm children. Then he had some Sunday school sessions for them. 8 children on a Sunday afternoon in a shed there. Later on, other farm children joined. He discovered the problems in the community there. There's a need for quality education. Started off with preschool and so on. And Afgri joined hands with them, and they built a school. As I'm talking to you now, they're going to actually build a high school there. They do micro farming. Some of your people apparently train them there. They've got an IT center there. When you open up that thing, it satellites into 4 high schools. They teach it from there on IT and maths and those sort of things. What I'm trying to say, there's a lot of goodwill in this country. Let's distinguish the noise from the substance. Let's not be ignorant about the cousin. Let's embrace the cousin, whether he's in jail or not. He's still our cousin, and we're going to rehabilitate him until he's fit again to be part of our lives. But let's not discount the value that lies in the strong goodwill in our country. The economy is the glue that holds society together. And let's go beyond the numbers and make diversity a lived experience. If I haven't convinced you this morning, I hope that I've confused you. Thank you. Christa, hoe wil je dat hanteren?
Thank you, Martin. Let's ask some questions or make some contributions on what Martin is saying here. It's always good to hear from the floor. Any questions?
And what he said will not be there. No.
Here's a question.
Thank you very much, Martin, for a very...
What's your name? Tabise, yeah. Okay. These were not easy sessions, and it didn't happen as an event. It was a process. Firstly, we had to recognize that there is a problem. The funny part of it is a lot of these beliefs were grounded in perceptions. Once we ask you, tell us about this belief, and we ask for evidence or incidences and so on, no, I can't really tell, but you know, and then you see they're ducking and diving around these things. Start unmasking this thing, and then you'll find out it's based sometimes on fear, sometimes it's based on uncertainty, sometimes it's based on just because people enjoy the privilege that they derive from holding that specific position. And then we need to zoom into what is fair, what is just about this thing. If you're on the other side, how do you have experience it? And I saw big women and young girls hugging each other and say, Auntie Anne, I don't like it when you give me work, that you actually take it back out of my hand. Because some of these things are going to take a little bit slower. And Ntabiseng is learning, by the way. Ne? And when you delegate this thing, don't expect Ntabiseng on the first try that she will be at 100% performance. But you need to create an enabling environment until Ntabiseng gets there and find her way to excellence. But Auntie Anne, I don't like this thing, You give me work, and 10 minutes after that, you even make these general statements, I don't even know why I gave it to you. She holds this general perception that Ntabiseng is not good at all. And yet, it's a perception that's rooted in something else. Let me do it. Then she gives the work to Carleen. Carleen becomes a superstar, comes performance appraisal. Normally she's got a lot of incidences because, Auntie Anne has this perception that Carleen can do better than Ntabiseng without finding out where does this thing come from. Do I make sense? It was not easy. People walked out there and say, ek gaan my nie laat verneder hierso deur die kinders. Ek het nou genoeg van die politiek gehad. Ek is uit hierso. But we had 87% participation in that group. 87% participation in that group. It was a big celebration today. People were dancing and they committed themselves to walk this journey. It's not an easy road. Any other questions? This is not an easy answer. But that very same extension officer, if he was a soccer star, and Real Madrid gave him a contract, he would have learned Spanish overnight. Would have learned Spanish overnight because the salary package there at Barcelona, Real Madrid, might be a few 100,000 per week. How desperate are we to excel in what we've been assigned to do? We're here because of the customer. We're here because we need to deliver a service to that customer. And that cuts both ways. Even white people that want to enter black markets, they should have at least a basic understanding. Just understand, at least break that barrier, greet them in their language, And, it will sound funny initially. It will sound awkward initial, but you'll be surprised how they embrace you for just trying and just, taking that extra effort. But if your extension officer was a soccer star or what, he would have learned Russian overnight. How desperate are we to excel in what we're supposed to do? That client is not going to change his language for you. You've got to adapt to the client expectation. And don't see that client as the problem. See it as a challenge for you to grow.
We recently recorded a beautiful story of Figgy, which is one of our silo managers, who couldn't speak a word of Afrikaans at the silo. And the farmer came on and said, geef my iemand wat my taal kan praat. And he went that night and bought himself a dictionary and he started learning to speak Afrikaans. And it was quite amazing. You must please go onto the In Touch website and listen to Figgy's story. He didn't take offense. He said, there's a language barrier for me to cross because I want to serve my client in that way. And how can I go and do this? And I think one thing we need to do is that we respect our client and therefore we want to serve him in his language. And even if it's in broken Afrikaans, you can start saying something, but then go over and say, well, would you mind if I express this in English, because I do it better in English? If we can take that offense and bring respect into this, I think we can go a long way. But please go and listen to Figgy's story. It's quite amazing to listen to that.
Beautiful story,
Yeah.
story. And even this farmer, he will also in his broken way communicate in English. He himself is battling for what, I wonder hoe gaan die Engels nou uitkom hier so. Wat sê hulle nou weer in Engels vir die ding? And it's a mutual journey that they've got to undertake to find a way of engaging with each other. You can't just stay away from the client because they only want to speak in their language. This is a very beautiful story. Any other questions?
I'm interested in this. You said diversity beyond the numbers.
Yes.
And I believe that in AFGRI we are there. You can see diversity. And we've got it on our scorecard. We're a level 4 and a level 3 triple BEE company. But do we really experience that? And how do we practically do diversity beyond the numbers that we have on our scorecards? I know you've given some ideas this morning, but how do we, each one of us that are sitting here, go and make that difference?
I don't know too much about your organization per se, but firstly, there must be an awareness about each other. There is this unconscious bias sometimes, which we need to be very careful about. You get a situation where Ntabiseng comes into the room. Sari and Enda was busy talking in Afrikaans. Ntabiseng comes in. They know exactly that this is not a client now. Ne? It's a total different thing. This is not a client. These are colleagues. They continue talking in Afrikaans and exclude Ntabiseng of that engagement there. That's that unconscious bias, It's not criminal, but it can be totally misread. So each one of us must consciously, what I say. I can't. If Gerard comes in, and then, hey, we all, we go to town via FNB Stadium and give report about the Stokvel and everything, and talk our talks here. Gerard sê, ek wil ons kinders die klomp weer hiervan. Be sensitive to those things. Because it's those little foxes that destroys the vineyard, that breeds suspicion. And if you say something, if you heard somebody saying something, it becomes a very nice learning experience. Did I understand it correctly? What you said? And clear that up. The other thing is to show, beyond the numbers, show a more, and we're not here to generate friendships. You came here to work, okay? You're not running a fan club here or whatever. But just go that extra mile to find out from the other person's life experience. You hear that so-and-so had, the mother passed away, such and such. Hey, is jy terug van verlof af? Ja, nee, okay, sien jou later in die meeting. No. Try and find out what went into the space of that individual that went through that traumatic experience. It will go a long way to break that as well. Because tomorrow you're going to need that. And some of my best encouragement came from quarters, least expected. From staff members, not necessarily in the top team, from top members down there and said, we're praying for you. Don't forget, we're behind you. Don't forget, this thing will go over. But just taking that extra personal interest in one. When it comes to communication, let's always, it's not me versus you, Krista. It's us versus a problem that erodes the culture in this organization. Depersonalize these things. You always, you never, you forever. And what Krista is going to say, when, where,
why, and ask me those questions. Yeah, you always say, tell me when. So don't depersonalize these things. And this situation creates a problem for the cohesion of diversity here. Can we talk about it? And find out from the other person. And you never correct publicly, you correct privately. There's nothing that can humiliate somebody like being publicly, rebuked. Call that person in, that's not what we stand for here in Africa. Can we talk about it? Is there a problem? Talk about it. But compliment publicly. Somebody's done something good, make a song and dance about it. And another thing which you see, these things must also be driven. I don't know how many of you are managers here, but leadership stands or falls on what is mirrored at the top. If there's not a credible lifestyle at the top, where we speak diversity in the numbers, in the reports and everything, and we don't live out those things, it falls flat. And Krista and who's the CEO still, Chris Venter? Chris and all these guys, they can have all these certificates there. We level this and level that. But if people don't experience it down here, that's why middle management, senior management must make sure that they live out these values. At the end of the day, people will emulate what they see in you and not what's on paper there. That's what's on paper there. Otherwise, it becomes a compliance exercise. And people are creatures, are very sharp. They will buck the system. And they will do it in such a way that they will stay out of trouble, but nothing was going to change. And until you believe in it yourself, because diversity is a business imperative. It's not just a law of government. It's you feeding off the strengths from an environment which was unknown to you for many years. And I must tell you that environment is very rich in its content, in its lived experiences, and so can other people learn from your environment, which is also very rich in its content and lived experiences. And I hope you'll remember my flowers example, because now it's no more a white thing to me. I can live with the fact if people need to be empowered to service their customer. But I think it's a bit of a tall ask if at an office environment, we all expected to speak Afrikaans. Am I talking to the right audience? Even if you can, in an office environment, all of you, if not, at least 90%, if not all of you, have gone through English as a language at school. And why must the Zimbabwean lady now, who's not going to have any contact with the customer, being taught in Afrikaans just for the sake of being functional in the office? Do you hear what I'm trying to say?
She was not taught just to be functional in the office. She was taught so that she can communicate with the customer.
With the customer. That's a different thing. But for office purposes. Look, that problem is not going to disappear just by any stroke of luck. It's going to simmer there, and once the wind blows, the flames are going to flare up again. And therefore, the sooner you deal with this problem, as you've aptly, as a typical IT person, the root cause analysis. I know Liberty is doing a lot of it now. I'm sitting on the board of the pension fund there, and I've been told there won't be board pack on our PCs for Thursday's board meeting. Where should they deliver my pack? And I'm going to carry, But coming back to this root cause analysis, I don't think we can fix it here in this meeting. But Krista, you people will be well advised in management to find a way to facilitate a process, we can get to the root of it. And I don't get a sense of antagonism. It is just, hear me out. I want to be fully functional, but assist me to overcome some of these things. But there was one hand there which I don't want to. Shemaine, you know, we had a similar culture issue there in our hospital at Netcare. And we designed what we call the Netcare way, and it's built on 7 pillars. And we build visuals around every corner. You see what we stand. It's kind of in your face. And the first thing is I always name my name. I always wear my name badge because it shows my identity. Secondly, I always greet everyone because I show my respect. The third pillar, I'm always well groomed to show my dignity. Fourthly, I always practice, well, this is now for the health field, practice proper hand hygiene because I can. Fifthly, I always seek consent to show my compassion. I don't just come and parachute into, can I please do X, Y, and Z? Sixthly, I always thank you to show my appreciation. And lastly, this was one that we built in when this diversity beyond the numbers came in, where we took a very firm stand against this thing. We said, I always embrace diversity. This was not part of the original 6 pillars. But over the last two years, we built it, and I always embrace diversity to show that I'm not a racist. It's public out there. Perhaps we need to work on an every way. Get into the lifts, I greet. Beginning to meetings, I check out. I'm aware that I can, that I'm inclusive in my communication. Decision making, all those sort of things. Go through that process. And what will define you as an organization? That whoever walks in here, this is what we've agreed upon. Forget how you've been brought up. We don't discount those things. Forget where, all those. But here in this space here, this is what prevails here, because this is what distinguishes our collective identity here. Perhaps, just consciously, intentionally, work on these. These are not big things, by just greeting. These are not big things by just saying thank you. This is not big things by always have an inclusive mindset. And we wait for the 7 steps to this and ABC to that. Look for the smaller things. Good people, I don't want to be disrespectful to your time, but thank you for, this is a journey. Uncomfortable, awkward, and difficult it might be. It's gonna get better, man. It's gonna get better. Isn't it so? What's your name again? Loveless. It's gonna get better. It will get better. We might think that we're 3 steps forward, 2. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. We go out with that mindset, with intention. It's going to get better. I thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you. I've been speaking to a lot of people since we opened up the discussion about language. And I know there are people that even sat here today that are saying, I'm getting so irritated that we talk again about Afrikaans. And if you are there, if something comes up every time, let's deal with that. And you might just ask yourself the question, in what way am I still not being the change that I want to see in my environment? Let a subject not, I trust that you will not remember out of today, we spoke about Afrikaans and English again. The fact that we spoke about it again says that we've got Houston, we've got a problem. But I also believe what we need to do as an organization is we need to have a black burial, good funeral session. And we need to invite everybody to it. And we need to mourn about what we had and what has been. And then we need to eat together. And we need to stand up, slaughter the fox, and we need to stand up in a new environment because we are part of an amazing company, a company that can make such an impact. And we are the leaders that can grow this company into that. The fact that we are talking about some difficult, messy subjects is because people, there are real deep hurt regarding where you have felt, I have not reached my fullest potential because I really did not understand. And if we can with empathy listen and say, I hear you. I had discussions with Mpu where I heard him and I started crying because I felt his pain. And sometimes you need to apologize on behalf of what other people did. And let's be that people. Let's be the bridge builders. If you need to apologize from a pure heart and say, please forgive us, we never realized this is what it did to you. It might never been you, but have the humility to be that instrument that can bring healing to our environments. If we can cross this bridge, can you imagine what can happen in our company? This company will be known as a business who really made a difference in an agricultural sector, which is, we are just part of something so big. So please guard your own heart. Don't walk out of this session and say, oh, what I remember is Afrikaans again. Please let us go and be the change that we want to see. Let us address every person in absolute humanity and say, I recognize you as a human being, therefore I will greet you. Don't wait for they out there and those who have not been here and the leaders, and don't wait for them to do it. Maybe we are 50 people in this place. Let us go and do it. Because the 50 of us can make a massive difference if we start walking out the change that we all want to see. So may you be truly blessed. Martin, thank you so much for just coming to share your wisdom and just who you are. And what blessed me most about Martin is when I've asked him, Martin, what should we pay you for this session? He says, no, Krista, this is the organization that I'm part of. And if you want to give a donation to this organization, you're welcome to do that. And I love your heart. May God really richly bless you in every endeavor that you take on. And I know that you will be used in amazing opportunities. You are a voice that our country desperately needs. And may you have the right platforms to express that voice. So thank you, Martin. We really appreciate you being with us. Our next session is next month. Bart Pretorius, I think, is going to be our speaker. And he's going to talk about how do we live out integrity, our values, and taking ethical decisions, even in a business world where it's sometimes very difficult to be true to who you are. So please don't miss that. And may you all go out and be the change that you want to see. I really appreciate that you've all been here. Just the last thing that I want to say is the intention of these sessions is not just for you to be here, but for you then to go out and have this similar discussion with your team members. That's why we publish this on the In Touch YouTube, that you can actually watch the sessions again. So go and spread the message and be part of the good yeast that can actually influence this company with the positivity that we really need. But we are blessed and privileged to be part of AFGRI.